bombing case is responding to basic questions in writing from authorities. It is Monday, April 22nd. Welcome to Lunch Break. I'm Wendy Bounds. Here with more details is the Wall Street Journal's Evan Perez. Evan, he's responding in writing. What does this tell us about his condition? Because I know authorities are very eager to talk to this young man.
Right. I mean, at this point, the suspect is still in very serious condition. We know that he suffered a gunshot wound in the throat and cannot speak. It's doubtful that that will change anytime soon. So essentially, what the law enforcement folks want to do is at least get him stabilized enough in the hospital so that he can start responding to some basic questions and perhaps do some interrogation again in writing. But first, I think they just have to get him out of this danger zone where his health is sort of in a precarious state where he's in and out of consciousness in the past couple of days.
All right, and by him we're referring to Dzhokar Tsarnaev, 19 years old, one of two Chechen brothers, believed or at least allegedly to have been involved in the Boston Marathon bombings. Dzhokar was captured in very dramatic fashion on Friday evening as many people were watching that unfold. Let's talk a little bit about the details that they are going to be trying to get from him. A lot of ammunition was discovered with these brothers. The suspects, they had more than a half a dozen homemade bombs with them at the time. I mean, Evan, is that just the key bit of information that they're going after? And of course, just to make sure they don't find any, there's not anything else laying around waiting to detonate, perhaps.
Right, exactly. I mean, that is actually one of the huge worries. One reason why the officials, the authorities in Massachusetts decided to essentially shut down Boston and much of its suburbs on Friday as they were trying to hunt down Dzhokar Tsarnaev. Essentially what the worry was and what was borne out early on Friday morning in the shootout, in that very dramatic shootout in Watertown, was that these guys had additional bombs, according to the authorities, and they were throwing them at the authorities as they were trying to escape. So the worry was, were they trying to do other things? Were they trying to carry out other attacks elsewhere, not just in Boston? And I think that is one of the main things that they're focusing on. If that is the case, were there other people perhaps who were helping them? That is still something that they're very much interested in at this hour.
Dzokar's older brother, killed on Friday. Let's talk about the weapons they themselves had. Obviously guns very much in the forefront of the public debate right now. Do we know, Evan, whether or not that they had obtained permission to either of these brothers to carry a gun?
Well, authorities so far haven't found any license that they were licensed to carry or had any permits. They have recovered firearms, including handguns and a long gun, perhaps some kind of an AK type firearm. The Massachusetts State Police is doing the forensics on that. We're told by sources that the registration numbers were removed or obliterated, which is a very common tactic in stolen firearms. Perhaps they bought it on the street. That is something obviously that they're going to look at to try to figure out who may have provided those weapons.
All right, Evan Perez, thanks so much. There will be a moment of silence in Massachusetts at 2:50 today, 2:50 p.m., about the time that the first bomb exploded at the Boston Marathon. Thanks for being with us, Evan.
Thank you.
Prosecutors facing a tangle of questions as they prepare to prosecute the Boston bombing suspect. Here to break down what are his rights is Wall Street Journal's legal expert, Ashby Jones. Now, there's some wiggle room with reading Dzhokar Tsarnaev, 19 years old, in the hospital right now, communicating only by writing with authorities. There's some wiggle room in reading his Miranda rights. Explain that to us in layman's terms.
Right. So essentially, the Miranda rights are these rights that you see on all the cop shows. You have the right to remain silent. You have the right to a lawyer if you can't afford one, etc. Typically, it's common procedure to read these rights to any suspect upon his or her arrest. Law enforcement said over the weekend that they had made the decision not to read him his rights because they wanted to get as much information about the investigation as they could. They didn't want anything to step in the way of their getting information.
In part because they're concerned there may be other explosive devices out there, and foremost is public safety. They do lose the ability to use some of this information, though, in a trial if they do not read him his rights first. Is that correct?
That's right. So essentially, they're kind of taking a gamble, and they're saying we're not going to read him his rights. we're likely to give up the ability to use anything he says against him to prosecute him, but we can use everything else we get to pursue other leads, etc. And I guess the thinking is that they can afford to give up this confession, a confession or a statement that he makes, because they have so much other information against him. Now, there's an exception. They could say, well, we had no choice. We had to question him without reading him the Miranda rights.
This is the public safety exception.
This is the public safety exception. They could argue to a judge, if they get a confession, they could say, actually, let us use this. There's an exception that says, if you feel like you're in imminent danger, or the public is in imminent danger, you do not have to read a suspect's Miranda rights, and you can still use the fruits of that interrogation against the defendant. And so they might have some luck in doing that. Experts are sort of torn on whether or not that's a good theory.
Very quickly, bail, unlikely for him, I would imagine.
Yeah, pretty much no chance. The folks I've talked to say that his lawyers probably won't even ask for it because it's such a long shot.
All right, Ashby Jones, thanks for bringing us that.
You bet.
Appreciate it.